So I was born in the United States shortly after this idea of affirmative action came about. Affirmative action is an well, it's a pretty controversial idea. And it really just comes down to we should be kind of positively discriminating against groups of people who have been historically marginalized. And I never really gave it a lot of thought when I was younger. I was just kind of like, that doesn't really affect me, so I don't really care. But I've come to realize later on now in my life that affirmative action, positive discrimination, does affect me in a very real way. And so I just want to talk about that because I think it's an important aspect of my life that has in some ways been not ignored, but just not recognized, not really acknowledged. So I think it's important that I and that other people who have been positively affected by affirmative action have that we do recognize that. And then I think it's also something of just a reflection activity to kind of think more critically about the different chances I've been given and the different chances other people have in their life to achieve success, whatever that term means to you, but to achieve success in their life. Now, I said that it didn't really think much about affirmative action, and that's just because the popular narratives were more or less these kind of very bipolar kind of perspectives that it was either very, very, very necessary to promote equality, or it was completely unfair and unjust and whatever. And so I kind of just didn't take either of those approach. And that's not to say that I was a centrist or anything like that. I don't consider myself a centrist, and certainly not on this issue. It just neither approach really fit me or that I cared about because I'm not from a marginalized background. So I mean, that argument that it's important for them is very important for them, but I never really connected with that because it wasn't really something that I saw myself in. And then for the other argument that this is unjust and unfair, I just always thought that was just, it held no weight. It was just kind of I just felt like it was a lot of complaining about something that's really a non-issue for the people who are in positions of privilege or who are in positions of power. And so a lot of the criticisms that I heard about affirmative action centered around this issue of performance and kind of quality. So you could say, like, if there's affirmative action that affects job placements, or maybe it affects placements at university, then I always heard this argument of like, oh, well, then the candidates aren't going to be as good, or they're not going to have as much quality, blah, 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 blah. And I always thought this was kind of a silly argument, more or less because having been on the inside of a lot of job hires and a lot of university placements and admission placements, it's silly to imagine that there's some sort of objective set of criteria or measures that we can place on somebody to say, oh, this person is unequivocally, undoubtedly, more of a quality hire, more of a quality admit to a program than person B. I know we try really hard to put these criteria down, and we make people take tests and we put them through all this rigmarole, but I think often the kind of fit, if we could use that word, and I don't even like that word, I'll talk more about that in another day, but if we could talk about the fit of someone, it has to do with so many other things that are really difficult to kind of put into a piece of paper or into a score on an exam than just just this artificial way of assessing a candidate. And so I always thought it was a little bit of a ridiculous argument to sit there and say, oh, well, we're going to have to hire poor quality candidates. We're going to have to admit poor quality students because we'll have to positively discriminate for group A over group B. I just always thought it was a bunch of nonsense. And so I think the reality hit me a few years ago that this is not an issue that I can just dismiss as not being a fight that I have to fight. And that's because Even though I don't come from a marginalized background, and so I don't directly necessarily benefit from affirmative action policies or programs, I indirectly benefit a lot from these programs. I indirectly, it affects my life in a very, very positive way. And it affects my work, it affects my teaching, it affected my entire journey through academia. And so I want to take a few minutes and just talk about that, because I think this is one of the things that we don't realize when we start making these very black and white arguments about justice and about needs for positive discrimination. We lose sight of the fact that a policy, an affirmative action policy, is something that can benefit everyone. It can benefit people who are in positions of power and privilege, and it can benefit marginalized groups. So the net effects are extremely positive for everyone, for all of society. And that's because it's given me the chance, as a person who comes from a position of privilege, as a person who doesn't experience any significant forms of marginalization, it's given me a chance to connect with, to learn from people who have a whole variety of diverse backgrounds. And that is an incredible opportunity. It's an opportunity I would not have been afforded otherwise had we just stuck to our more traditional models of, admission and the kind of criteria that we use that, in effect, marginalize people. And so I really think that the benefits I've gotten out of being able to work and learn from people from very different backgrounds has been really, really helpful in my life and in my career. It's my personal growth, but then also my professional ability to advance, because I understand more. I can try to relate to different perspectives even better. And it's also given me a chance to create more innovative, newer, and more exciting solutions to the different problems that I've faced in my professional and my personal life. And that's just because when you have a group of people who are sitting around the table who run the gamut, who are reflective of the diversity of the human experience, you are much more likely to avoid pitfalls, to avoid problems, and to run into, by happenstance or just by luck or by actual critical thinking and creativity, really elegant, really refined solutions that deal with more systemic issues that are at stake. And there's a lot of science that backs this up, that diverse teams can create more innovative solutions. And so that directly benefits me. The success of a lot of my endeavors have been the direct result of me having had the opportunity to work with diverse groups and me working with diverse groups in those settings. So I think there's just such a value behind the supply, if you could call it in economic terms, the supply of diversity to any setting that we have in today's society. And so I think it's really, really important that we recognize that value that everyone experiences, that everyone gets out of things like affirmative action policies, and that there's not any kind of objective, systematic measurements that we could place on a person to say that they will, without the shadow of a doubt, be more successful than someone else. We try, but we often fall way, way short of reality. And the reality is those measurement criteria are often marginalizing in and of themselves. And so I think we really have to restructure the way we think about these issues. Takeaway is just this. I think we undervalue people's lived experiences quite a bit. There is so much that goes into your knowledge and ability that is directly gained from your experience as an individual human being. And that when you add all those up across a continuum, across the entire spectrum of human diversity, then you can come up with some really, really great solutions to really, really challenging problems. And the number one way that I've found of achieving this goal, this kind of ambition, this opportunity, taking advantage of this opportunity to learn from others, is just to listen. just to listen to their stories. So I think that's my takeaway for you today, is that go out and just listen to someone's story. Ask them a question about their past. Ask them a question about their childhood. Whenever I meet someone new, I always try to find ways of getting back into their roots. Where are they anchored? Geographically, socially, ideologically, try to understand a bit more about them and their past and their experiences, how that's led them to where they are today. Actually, one of the questions I love asking is, what did your parents do for a living? You can learn so much about an individual's present day situation by understanding what the occupation their parents had. So that's my challenge to you.